Thank you guys for joining us today for Your Body, Your Systems Food Edition, the second in the series from our OUHSC Nutritional Sciences students, really with the whole theme of National Nutrition Month here in March. So really appreciate Brandon, Meredith, and Natalie joining us today to share some of their knowledge.
Hello, everybody. We are nutrition and dietetic students at the College of Allied Health at the OU Health and Science Center, which I hope you all know by now since you're joining our session. So I'm Brandon. And
I'm Meredith. And I'm Natalie.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about whole body wellness and how nutrition can help us support our bodies, which support us. So it's a great cycle we got going. All right. So before we begin, we wanted to ask you all, what do you know about this topic, just off the top of your heads? So we got a few questions we wanted to go over. You will not be graded on this, so do not stress too much. We just want you to hold on to these questions and the answers that you give until after our presentation, and we can reflect on the answers that you would have given now versus after. So we'll give you all a few minutes to do that. Time. Good. Okay, so hopefully that was enough time. If not, do not worry. We'll put the screen up back at the end again. So I'm going to start talking about our body's digestive system. Whenever we speak about whole body wellness, this is one of the most important systems we have within our body. So here is a picture of the total overview of the digestive system. But do not worry, we're not going to go into each part. We're just going to talk about the specific organs that we can talk about with a nutrition intervention and the ones that we can support with things that we eat. So we're going to focus on the stomach, the liver, the kidneys, the small intestine, and the colon. It's also known as the large intestine. So we're going to start with the stomach. Now, I call this the digestion machine because this is where almost all the food in your body gets digested primarily. And this is because of the unique environment that the stomach promotes with its highly acidic environment. This is because the stomach is unique in being able to produce hydrochloric acid, which is so acidic that it breaks down all the food that you eat. Now, whenever this environment is not supported, it can result in symptoms of upset stomach, which I'm sure all of us have experienced at one point or another. And this can be formed in the ways of indigestion, acid reflux, bloating, nausea, and vomiting. So ways that we can help maintain the function of the stomach and of this highly acidic environment is through keeping up fluid intake to get a good flow of everything going to the stomach, remaining active after eating to help with the breakdown of the food in the stomach. Consuming smaller, more frequent meals gives the stomach a lighter workload to have to go into and allows the hydrochloric acid to break down the food in a better manner. And avoiding highly acidic and highly basic foods so that we don't get any changes in that acidity in the stomach. Examples of that would be like whenever you take a Tums, that's a very basic food because it calms down the acid in your stomach. But abusing Tums, it will lower the efficiency of your stomach. Highly acidic food is all the delicious hot sauce that we put on our wings. Now, I know it's good, but we don't want to do too much. The next source we're going to look at, next organ we're going to look at is the liver. Now, this is a primary source of filtration in our body. Now, the liver is very special in its functions in that it breaks down fats through the secretion of a thing called bile, which is unique to the liver. It also stores fat-soluble vitamins that we get from food. Now, these vitamins are very important. It's vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin B12. It also produces cholesterol, hormones, and proteins that we use in the functions throughout our whole body. And it filters and regulates the contents of our blood. Now, the liver, in comparison to other organs in our digestive system, has a unique ability to regenerate damage that's happened to itself. But we don't want to abuse this unique ability too much. So to promote liver health, we can start by avoiding alcohol, high salt intake, and high sugar intake. And we can increase lean proteins, fiber, and antioxidants. These all focus on helping the liver filtrate as best as possible and avoiding any unnecessary damage that we can do to this organ. Now, the next major site of filtration in our body is the kidneys. The kidneys are so important to the digestive system that they have their own special little blood vessels, which I put a nice little picture right here with a nice arrow to make sure you really see which ones are the special ones. The kidneys are responsible for filtering your blood to a point where it can return this blood back to your body in its most clean form, removing those toxins and anything that we don't want in our blood. The ways that we can promote kidney health is really how we can promote these blood veins in the kidneys. So we can do that by avoiding excessive salt, which we know is linked to hypertension, getting in vitamin C and vitamin E, which are helpful antioxidants, getting B vitamins like B9 and B12 to help make healthy red blood cells, and to get potassium and magnesium. Potassium helps blood pressure because we need it to be in a 1-to-3 ratio with sodium. So you make sure you get your potassium along with your sodium. And magnesium helps prevent kidney stones in the kidneys. And as always, we want you to get adequate water to help with that flushing out of the kidneys. So now we got the small intestine. Now I put up a little picture right here. I'll explain it in a bit. The small intestine is made up of 3 parts that can total up to 20 feet long in an adult. Now, that is a lot of space that we need to take care of, but the small intestine is so important because 90% of absorption of the food that we're breaking down occurs here. Now, this is what the picture of the small intestine is so specialized that it makes the surface area as big as possible for food to get digested in. So you have these little microvilli, as you can see, it's zoomed in. Everything has these little phalanges sticking out to help you get everything you can out of food. So we want to make sure that we support this important organ as well as possible. So the way we do this, again, is to get water, to get fiber, to get some pre and probiotics, and to avoid excessive sugar. Now, fiber and pre-probiotics we'll talk about later, but avoiding excessive sugar is important because excessive sugar slows down digestion in the small intestine, and it allows for a food source to be there for unhealthy bacteria that we don't want there. So that can lead to some bloating, nausea, vomiting, some things that we don't want. So pre and probiotics. Prebiotics, using it is food to feed those probiotics, and that all prebiotics are dietary fibers. So whenever you're getting some fiber, you're also getting some prebiotics to help. Probiotics are microorganisms that help support the healthy bacteria that are already in our digestive system. Now, I know that might sound a little weird, but these little microorganisms help us out so much. They help support nutrition absorption through processes like fermentation of food that we have trouble digesting. They also support the immune system by not allowing unhealthy bacteria to take up its space. It's very territorial. They like to take care of us. And it also helps relieve upset stomach. And I put dots here because there's continuous studies going around about how important supporting these microorganisms are in our body. Sources of the microorganisms and pre-probiotics would be fermented foods, usually, so like yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, bone broth, and tempeh. So if it's fermented, it's usually got some probiotics in there. The next stop we have is the colon and large intestine. I call this water's last stop because this is where all the free water gets absorbed and all the water that's left in the food gets absorbed. This is also where our waste gets compacted and it's being able to get excreted. So we support this in a similar way that we support the small intestine, which is through water, fiber, pre-probiotics, and avoiding excessive sugar. So I've mentioned water a lot because it helps everything. It really does. It helps break down food. It helps absorb nutrients. It helps support fiber's effectiveness. and it helps increase feelings of fullness. Now, an easy rule of thumb for us to make sure we're getting enough water is to get 1 milliliter of water per calorie that we're getting. So for example, I have up here, if you follow the standard 2000 calorie diet that's used to make all your nutrition labels, you would want to get about 2000 milliliters of water, which can be converted to 8.5 cups per day. Now, these bottles of water that I have pictured here, which is the common ones that we usually get from our pantry, is 2 cups of water. So drink 4 of those, you're at a great start and a great benchmark to reach for. So I've mentioned fiber a lot, and I will say one thing that I've learned from my studies here so far is that we underestimate the power of fiber so often. So I wanted to talk about how the 2 types of fiber, soluble and insoluble, can help us in many ways. Soluble fiber is responsible for slowing down digestion, and insoluble fiber speeds up digestion. Insoluble fiber cleans out our intestines and anything that could be left behind through digestion, and soluble fiber swells up so it can absorb things that it normally wouldn't, which is cholesterol mainly. And water supports this by allowing us to get this fiber through our digestive system and allowing it to perform at the fullest of its abilities. Sources would be beans, sweet potatoes, broccoli, carrots, apples, whole grains, nuts, anything fruit and veggie wise will have some sort of fiber in it. Insoluble fiber is usually the skin around the fruit and veggie, and then the soluble is usually the fleshy part in the middle. This promotes heart health by being one of the few things that can actually take cholesterol out of our body. It promotes fullness by swelling up in our stomach and having our stomach stretch a little bit so it can be like, hey, I'm full, don't need anything else. And it supports energy by slowing down the breakdown of carbs. So that's why we eat whole grains, because like oatmeal will help you last longer throughout the day because it's a slower release of this energy due to the fiber that's with it. So we recommend that you get 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. And this could be a little bit intimidating to hear, but as you see here, it's all about making smart exchanges throughout your day. So say you can have a cup of oatmeal and an apple for breakfast, a cup of black beans and a cup of brown rice for lunch, and a sweet potato ended off. That's 31 grams of fiber. You're at the upper end right there. Now this goes like brown rice has 3.5 grams per cup, but white rice only has 0.6 grams of fiber per cup. So it's really just by looking at these exchanges you can make throughout your day. Lastly, I wanted to end with talking about cleansed diets, because this is a thing I hear about a lot when hearing about digestive health. Do we need cleansed diets? Not necessarily. We have 3 beautiful organs that detoxify our body already when they're working as hard as possible. So we want to make sure we support these. It's the liver, the kidneys, and the colon. Now I put a quote here from this article that I listed at the bottom. And it's just, there's no conclusive medical evidence that detoxes or cleanses will benefit your digestive tract. But there is one thing, and it's fiber. So we need to make sure we're getting our solid foods, getting those fruits and veggies to help us get that fiber total every day and to help support our natural detoxifiers.
Alrighty then. So my section is, what is the big deal about the cardiovascular system? All roads literally lead to the heart. This is an inside look of a human heart. The arrows here that you're seeing show direction of where the blood travels as the heart pumps it through. You can also actually see where it says like to the lungs, to the body, from the lungs, from the body. The big deal about this is blood carries oxygen throughout the body and picks up more oxygen when it reaches the lungs. This is important because if anything were to limit the flow of blood in any of the arteries or veins that you're seeing here, then it limits the amount of blood and oxygen to that part of the body. And if that doesn't convince you of how important the heart is, put your hand on your heart, as in when you hear the national anthem, that thumping your heart is working to send oxygenated blood throughout your body 24/7. That's how powerful a muscle the heart is. It doesn't stop. It doesn't take a break. You can't rest your heart. It just keeps going and will always keep going. So how do we keep our hearts healthy? It's easier than you think. According to the American Heart Association, there are multiple ways to keep our hearts healthy, such as regular exercise, which the ideal is 30 minutes for 5 days a week, or a total of 150 minutes for a whole week. Avoid smoking or vaping, and then eating a nutritious diet that promotes heart health, which many associate as a heart healthy diet. So what's considered a heart healthy diet? The basic definition is a diet that's supposed to keep the heart in good health. This includes eating certain foods and avoiding others, fluid intake, and even portion control. The American Heart Association, other scientists, dietitians, doctors, and most health organizations encourage this diet due to the nutritious benefits and positive impact it has on the heart. A fun fact is also too is that the diet is also called the Mediterranean diet or the DASH diet, which is known as the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, which is actually where most of the research for a heart healthy diet originated from. So that's like when people hear Mediterranean or DASH, this is where we're talking about the same idea. Okay, so what foods does this include? We got starting off, we got a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, including fresh, dried, frozen, and canned. Though I do note that canned, you have to watch out for added sugars and sodium, which sometimes can happen in canned and a little bit in frozen. Some examples of fruits and veg is a whole range. So we got tomatoes, cabbages, carrots, lettuce, spinach, kale, broccoli, cauliflowers, apples, oranges, bananas, pears, peaches, carrots, and that is just scratching the surface. Following the fruits and veg, you got whole grains and any products that contain mostly whole grains. So we got your bagels, your English muffins, your tortillas, your hot and cold cereals, oatmeal, shredded wheat, brown or wild rice, quinoa, oats, pasta, and couscous. Then we have our healthy sources of protein, which actually have quite a bit of variety here. So we got the plant-based ones, such as legumes and nuts. We got fish and seafood. We've got low-fat or non-fat dairy, like milk, your yogurts, your cheeses. You've got poultry. So you got your skinless chicken or turkey, or your 93% lean ground versions of those. You've got your lean red meats. So you got also 93% lean for ground for that. Also, you got your pork shoulder, beef sirloin. Anything with less marbling is usually what's considered best. Also, then you've got beans, peas, and lentils, like black beans and chickpeas. You've got eggs, and of course, tofu. Then we have our liquid vegetable oils, which these are non-tropical based. So this includes like your canola, your corn, olive, peanut, safflower, soybean, or sunflower. We also have like low-fat mayonnaises. And just to note, like for salad dressings, like oil-based is actually preferred over cream-based in this consideration. We also then following that have our unsaturated fats, which is our liquid-based fats, like our vegetable oils. And also it's actually more preferred over the saturated fats, which you usually see your butters and your shortenings. And then also actually included in this is keeping up water intake. So actually keeping up your fluid intake here. Okay, so what does any of that look like? Well, as you can see here, here's a wide range variety here, what we're seeing. You can see in one of the bowls, you can see your lean meats. Another one, you see some radishes and carrots. Another one, you see some of your seafood. You see beans, you see peas, you see sprouts, you see couscous. All these fruits and veg, everything you see here would be considered heart healthy. So it's not limiting by any means. It's actually this great variety that we're seeing here. And actually even show it better is actually what I was talking about portion control earlier, or just even portioning. This is called the Idaho plate method. And this just shows general portioning on like how probably you should portion like your fruits, your veg, your proteins, and your whole grains. So this is to show like you see two variations of this, but it just shows like half your plate really should be considered your fruits and your veg. And then a quarter of your plate can be your proteins of any form. And then the other last quarter is like your whole grains, your pastas. So it's a good way to kind of like when you look at your plate to go, how much should I be eating of this? How much I should be eating of that? Just a general look at it. Okay, so are there any foods that really aren't preferred in this diet? Unfortunately, there are. So that this start off with is the tropical oils. So the coconut, the palm, the cottonseed, and the palm kernels. Fried foods, really anything fried, or even like heavily breaded would be considered into this. Heavy syrup and like canned fruits and vegetables, like when I was mentioning earlier, we're watching out for added sugar and sodium or salt. This is usually where it ends up. This is that heavy syrup that's used for preservation technique is where you'll usually see it. Then there's high saturated fats. Like I mentioned the butter and the shortening earlier. This also includes like lard, bacon fat, gravy, cream sauces, hydrogenated margarine, cocoa butter, full fat dairy items, organ meats, fatty and really heavily marbled meats, spare ribs, sometimes even hot dogs and sausages. You got also regular bacon, butter popcorn, or high fat snack crackers. Also then we have our white refined flour, which the reason it's considered this list is because due to the processing method the flour undergoes. So this includes anything that's going to contain that white flour. So you get your bread, your muffins, your frozen waffles, cornbread, donuts, biscuits, quick breads, cakes, pies, and even egg noodles. And then finally, your added sugar or salt, which you'll see, like I mentioned, in canned foods, also like in some frozen prepared foods, you'll also see as well. And even to make it kind of more of a note of this, is that the dietary guideline for Americans recommends actually max limit at 10% of your diet a day being added sugar. So that's only 10% of your whole diet being that max. And then that same group also says that max intake of sodium or your salt intake should be 2,300 milligrams, which seems like a huge amount, and it is. But then when you start looking at some of these other foods, you can start seeing how it gets taken up really quickly. And then also, really, a majority of processed foods and condiments like your ketchup, full-fat mayonnaise, your soy sauces, some of your frozen meals and boxed meals as well can be considered in that process. Now, I say majority because there are some that aren't as bad. Okay, so then out of all of that, so how does a heart-healthy diet make our hearts actually healthy? So here's the nutritional impact. All those foods I mentioned earlier, a huge bountiful amount of foods, have this great impact on our bodies. So we got our fiber, we got our complex carbohydrates, we got our B vitamins, we got our minerals, we got our polyunsaturated fatty acids, we got our antioxidants, we got our omega-3s and our omega-6 fatty acids as well. We also got phytochemicals and antioxidants. So we get this huge bonus of what we're looking at here. So then, how does this actually impact the heart? Well, studies have shown between the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, and looking at just what's considered heart healthy, these are the stats by here. Now, the cardiovascular and stroke is reduced by 24%. Heart attacks are reduced by 33%. Coronary heart disease is reduced by 28%. It'll help decrease your LDLs. It'll help increase your HDLs. It decreases blood pressure. It reduces blood cholesterol. And ultimately, it just helps increase your lifespan. And that's what they've just seen constantly throughout this whole system.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the skeletal and muscular system. And so first we're going to start off with what is this? Your muscular system is responsible for balance and posture, your strength, your movement, and it produces heat. And it's composed of, as you could probably guess, all the muscles in your body. And so important nutrients that aid in this are protein and water, and we're going to go into further detail of that in a minute. But this is this picture is an example of all the different muscles you have in your body, especially just from the front. And so the skeletal system has some of the same responsibilities, and it's movement, producing red and white blood cells, protecting and supporting organs, and storing minerals. And it's composed of different bone types, bone tissue, bone marrow, and bone cells. And so two important minerals that we're going to talk about that aid the system are calcium and vitamin D. And so first, exercise. It is good for both the muscular and skeletal system. An adult should get about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic activity a week. So moderate would include like your daily walks for 30 minutes or something like that. And vigorous is more your like gets your heart rate up a lot more, running, stuff like that. You should also strength train twice a week for all major muscle groups. So you could do legs one time and arms another. A lot of people like to split up their arms once they get more into it. You can do it any way you please. So what does exercise do to your muscles? So strength training stretches your muscles and it causes these little tears in them. And they need to heal, which ultimately grows your muscles. Well, what helps heal these tears? Protein. So protein in the muscular system. So what does protein do for your muscles? It's a macronutrient that helps rebuild these muscles after you do these little tears in them. And they are composed of these two filaments that are called myosin and actin. And basically, they're just responsible for your muscle contraction. And they need to rebuild themselves in order to continue these contractions and make you stronger. And so how much protein should you take in a day? So it's 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram you weigh. And so this is your daily recommended intake. And basically you can find your kilograms by taking how much you weigh in pounds and dividing that by 2.2. And then whatever number you get, you just multiply by 0.8. And that is how much you should get per day. And so how much after exercise? So your body can only use about 20 grams of protein at a time. So having this within a 30-minute window of when you finish exercising helps with aiding this healing of muscles. So your muscular system and hydration. So water plays a huge role in this, and especially preventing soreness, because as we all know, it sucks being sore after the gym. But so increasing blood flow to exercising muscles due to this blood pressure being adequate. And so hydration helps decrease inflammation in your body after you exercise, and it decreases cramps. I don't know if any of you guys ever like get back into the gym and the next day you're sore, but the next day after that you're like extremely sore. This is called DOMS, which is delayed onset muscle soreness, and it can be way worsened if your body is not hydrated. So I definitely recommend that. And when you exercise, we lose electrolytes. And so as we sweat, we need to intake water and other electrolytes, and this can be Propel, Gatorade, G0, G2, other items like that to help keep our hydration levels normal. And so to our skeletal system, we use vitamin D, or we need vitamin D and calcium to keep it strong. And so the vitamin D recommended intake is 800 IUs and 100 or 1,000 milligrams of calcium. And so your body needs vitamin D to help absorb this calcium. And so Americans on average are deficient in both vitamin D and calcium. So it's super important to try to get your daily doses. So calcium and phosphorus work together to mineralize and strengthen our bones, and it's important to avoid osteopenia and also osteoporosis, which is definitely a big thing as you get older. And so your peak bone mass is ages 25 to 30. And that doesn't mean that you should like not take calcium in or vitamin D after these ages. You still want to like continue to keep your bones strong, and working out, having calcium and vitamin D intake, hydration, all of that is super important in keeping this strength. So in conclusion, whole body wellness is built upon unique roles of each individual system that makes up the body. Each of these systems benefit from the same thing, a well-balanced diet. So help your body help you feel good by providing it with the nutrients it needs. So now we are going to do the same quiz as we had before, and I'm going to give you guys a minute or two to like go through your questions, see if any of your answers have changed, and then we're going to talk about it. And then I want to see if you guys have any other ideas on like answers that could be. So I'll give you guys a second. Okay, so we are going to go over answers now. So what is the recommended amount of daily fiber? You want to talk about this?
25 to 30 grams. We saw that in that little equation that we had on that slide, that smart exchanges throughout your day, the things you eat, you can easily accomplish this. And I hope that you aim for it. It helps our digestive system so much. The next one is, what part of the digestive system does water help? I kind of threw this in as a trick question. Hope I didn't ruffle y'all's feathers too much. It helps all of it. Water is essential to every system we have in our body, and getting enough can really help promote whole body wellness.
Okay, so then what are the 3 foods that are beneficial for heart health? Now, I just put the whole list down, but if you can get any of those 3, I would say you're really good. So like you get your fruits, your veg, your whole grains, your healthy protein, your liquid vegetable oils, and unsaturated fats. If you can remember any of those 3, you're doing good. And then what is the one nutritional benefit for heart health? So that was talking about like what's the nutritional impact? So like your dietary fiber, your complex carbs, your vitamins, your minerals. PUFA is short for polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's just a shorthand we'll use. And then antioxidants as well. So if you answer any of that, you're also doing great. So there you go.
And then how many grams of protein should you eat a day? Again, you just take your weight in pounds, you'll divide it by 2.2 to get your weight in kilograms, and you multiply it by 0.8. And then true or false, the average American is deficient in both vitamin D and calcium. It's true.
It's true.
Sadly, it's true.
It's true.
And so, yes. Now we are opening the floor to all questions. Anything? I don't know how to pull up the chat.
If you could relay the questions to us, that'd be great.
Yeah, you bet. Right now, we don't have any in the chat, but while people are thinking of those and maybe dropping them in the chat, really appreciate it. I think you guys really helped show us how much just our overall nutrition can play such a big impact on all systems for our body to operate and operate well and firing on all cylinders. As I usually like to say, I refer it to like a car a lot of times where, you know, you have good maintenance and you want to put good things in it, so all parts of it work well. So I think that was great that you guys showed how our nutrition really impacts our overall body and all systems in it, which is great. Autumn asked, if I don't eat wheat or dairy, do I need a calcium supplement? Y'all's thoughts on that one?
You can get calcium from other food sources. It's commonly fortified, which means it's like added into foods that don't usually have it. So definitely there's options to work with any dietary restrictions that you have.
Fantastic. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, and also say if you are concerned, we are talking about nutrition health here, but we also kind of want to point out too that if you need to like a multivitamin, like a little like multivitamin calcium, it doesn't hurt necessarily. You just don't want to take like 10 of them. There's always an issue. There's always an overdose issue. But if you take like one a day or something like that because you're concerned, it wouldn't hurt either at the same time.
Yeah. When we talk about supplements, it's always better to get these nutrients from whole foods because there's things in those foods that help those nutrients work to the best of their ability. Now, supplements is good if there's no food options. Yeah.
Excellent information. Yeah, and always, you know, I think that plays in well that if you have some maybe some dietary restrictions because of health issues or whatever the case may be, that's why it's so important to work with your physician and a registered dietitian to help navigate through those. And if you need to look at supplements or other alternatives. So absolutely. Next, how do you think the fasting to help lose weight but balance nutrients? Sorry, maybe let's see. Trying to read it a little bit better. How do you think what do you think about fasting to help lose weight but balance nutrients? So some people like to use like intermittent fasting. How do you think that works with if you're trying to help lose some weight but also balance your nutrients a little bit?
All right. So intermittent fasting has been shown to help control body weight, but it needs to be done in the correct manner. There is some routines and stuff that you can look up. If you're just overall fasting, like to an unhealthy amount, it will actually cause your body's weight to influx, which is way worse for your health. Because your body will start thinking, oh, I'm in a starvation state, I'm going to die. So they're going to start taking in everything it can and jump right back. To help with nutrient absorption or to get your daily nutrients, like we said earlier, it's always important to get these nutrients from foods. So we don't necessarily want you to restrict this food intake. You can look at more nutrient dense food, which is foods that have higher amount of nutrients in comparison to calories. And this will help you limit your food intake while getting the most out of your food. Anything? Huh? Yeah. The key nutrient dense food we always talk about, avocados. That's a thing. Avocado has so much good stuff in it for you in comparison to how much calories it has. And opposite end of that spectrum is energy dense, which would be like chips. They're fried and they don't have a lot of nutrients in it that we need to necessarily use. So definitely look into some nutrient dense food options. And if you're going to do intermittent fasting, make sure you're doing it in a healthy way.
Excellent, thank you. And then what can we do as future providers and current community members? Because there's added sugar and salt everywhere. So that is a big challenge. They like to hide it and stuff. Even those things that labeling says, it's healthy foods or low fat, non-fat, a lot of times to make them taste good, they throw in that added sugar. So we really have to be careful. Any recommendations or, tools to help us navigate through that a little bit better?
Well, actually, like we kind of mentioned, with the new change in food labels, which I say relatively new, it happened a few years back. If you actually look at food labels now, I wish I had an example in front of me to show you, but they actually say for like carbohydrates, they'll say like added sugar now as part of the category. And so you can actually look at that for like any food's got a label on it, you can actually see it from there. Also, all like the foods I mentioned earlier that I consider like part of like the heart healthy diet, those anything that's like original food, like from its original source, is not going to have any add sugar to it. It's going to have very limited saturated fats in it, so you don't have to worry as much from those foods. And then for watching out like for the add sugar and then for like your added sodium intake, you can also see it on the food labels as well to like see how much sodium it'll say on there. And actually you'll see if you look at a food label on the far right column, it's going to say a percentage. And that percentage is saying how much out of like a 2,000 calorie diet, how much is that sodium taking up of the total amount you should be having. And so you can kind of also watch out for there and see, like, you'll see your sodium, you'll say, it's hitting 2,000 calorie diet, which they usually base at 2,300 milligrams on. And they'll say that it'll be like, 10% of that, 15%. And you can see it on there to kind of like how watch it. Really just like adding fruits and vegetables is really great. Leaner proteins, your whole grains, all that's going to be really low in your added sugars and your sodium. So just going for those foods would help.
Can you all hear me talk if I talk a kind
Yeah, I
of
hear
a
you now.
follow-up? So I did attend when I think a workshop over like added sugars, nutritive sugars, that thing. And so for me, I was really more aware of like labels and however, everything. My question was actually more for, our friends or our family that go to the gas station, grab stuff, eat, like the eats. It's just everywhere. It's like, oh, let's drink some pop. And so from that perspective, it's like all of the US seems like it's going against everything that you just presented on. So I was just curious, like how we and how might you suggest we combat that, because the magnitude is great in a bad way.
You can start if you're trying to like say, if you got like a family member or something like that, maybe like a sibling or a cousin or a parent, and they're like going to the gas station a lot, they're having a really busy day and they're like, we have no time to do any prep. You can maybe just start like saying, hey, how about just get a piece of fruit? Or even like, I know it sounds really simple, but like a piece of fruit, some vegetables, keep it really simple. And even though I said like earlier, watch out with the frozen fruits and veg, there actually are frozen fruits and like veg that aren't as high in added sugars and aren't as high in sodium. And heck, you can just tell them, get a bag of frozen veggies and get a bag of frozen fruit and defrost it. I'm going like bare bones simple here to kind of say, just like to keep it. People are like, we have no time in life. We want to just get stuff done and just eat and go. And you can do stuff like that. Just really kind of like, you can keep it simple. And then as you work, and then as they work on that and they go, oh, it's kind of nice to have this and this added on. Then they can maybe start doing that, maybe spending like 10 minutes, putting maybe like 20 minutes while they're cooking dinner, they could put like carrots in the oven with some salt and pepper and like bake some carrots, or just some basic simple stuff. It doesn't have to be complicated and doesn't have to be some huge dietary change. Just simple basics can just really be a big impact.
And to go on that, like whenever we're talking about gas station foods, we're looking at something that can just be simple off the rip. Frozen foods that typically are much more high in salt and sugars are going to be your frozen meats and your frozen cheeses, because of the way that these need to be taken care of and processed. Also, it's just explaining that, like, I understand that like on the go food, like that's most of what the American culture is right now. Like, what can I get right now? What's going to save me time? What can I get the most out of? Definitely saying, hey, those fruits and veggies make you feel more full. But I would say also do not be scared of artificial sweeteners. I know that's an opinion. Just don't rely on this to completely substitute out sugar. The one that we really want to avoid is high fructose corn syrup, which, you know, is the one that is used in sodas. Because in like my part of the presentation, talked about the high sugar content stopping up their digestive system. It's because we have trouble digesting that. So don't be afraid of artificial sweeteners. They're good.
The last thing I want to put in, I know a lot of gas stations, like you have your processed foods of like your chips and like Chex Mix, whatever that stuff. But you also, most of them will have like a little refrigerated section with like yogurt parfaits and sandwiches and on like whole wheat bread and stuff like that. Maybe influence them to try to grab that instead of the peanut butter filled pretzels or something like that, because it's still like an on the go food, but it's a little more nutrient dense to keep them full.
Thank you all.
Yeah, excellent. Great discussion, responses. Certainly, you know, one rule of thumb I try to follow for myself and in general is kind of that 80-20. So everything in moderation, not, you know, being careful with, you know, restrictions or anything like that. Of course, if you have, you know, a medical or health issue, you need to be mindful of. There are some, you know, things that way. But in general, you know, I enjoy things in moderation. So I think that in general is a good rule of thumb for all of us. But yes, it can be very difficult in the American diet, and especially the on the go, in trying to get healthier items most of the time. So great job. Also, it was asked, is it better to switch from high carb to low carb while with a high fat diet? Heard high fat will let the body consume energy from the liver using ketone, making the brain more efficient. This is a pretty in-depth question. So, you know, stuff like this is why it is really great to tap into, you know, utilizing a registered dietitian and medical providers and so on. So I don't know, you know, where you guys are at in your education. Definitely in the follow-up email, I'll make sure and put in some resources for registered dietitians. But do you guys have any thoughts?
So the amount for carbs that we usually try to keep our calories in is like 40 to 50%, right?
Yeah, AMD is at 40 to 60.
40 to 60. You don't want to go below that because carbs are the main energy for your brain. Your brain takes up all this energy. It's working hard all day, and it mainly is using carbohydrates for fuel. Now, talking about ketones, we're actually just talking about this in class right now. So it's a very relevant question for us. But we are usually advising against our body using ketones in the body because it causes a lot of metabolic shifts in your body that aren't necessarily beneficial to the whole body. Ketones come from the catabolism of proteins, yeah, and that's gonna take away a special building block from your musculoskeletal system, like we talked about earlier. It's gonna put more stress on the liver. Also, increasing that fat intake would harm the liver as well, leading to like fatty liver disease or something else. Anything else? Definitely follow up with a registered dietitian.
If you're worried about doing like low carbs, you can maybe say thinking there's like such thing as called like simple versus complex. So I mentioned like the thing about complex carbs earlier. And instead of like going, you know, maybe it's high fat, low carb, maybe go with like more complex carbs and your body's going to digest them slower. So simple carbs are like really kind of tied in with like the added sugars and like the really fast stuff. Like a simple carb could be like a cupcake. We like have that, like it's like really, your body processes it really quickly. You get this really high, you feel really happy and bouncy and you're dancing all around and then you crash. With a complex carb, like whole wheat bread or whole wheat bagel, your body's going to take longer to process that. And that's where fiber actually is sourced in. And you can maybe, instead of doing like those really simple sugar carbs, you can do more complex and your body's going to process it more and you won't get such a high and low jump and decrease. So your body can actually help work with that too, if that helps also for your question.
Wonderful. I think you guys really attacked that well. So it's almost like you're having a test, right? You're checking all the stuff, all the knowledge, the stuff that you're learning. So you guys are doing well. So yeah, absolutely. Like I said in the follow-up email, we'll also encourage give those different resources for tapping into registered dietitians. We're great resource, whether you use them, just one time or on a regular basis, just to kind of help give you some guidance and some healthy eating put together. So a lot of great resources. And this just shows just how important registered dietitians are, that can help with your overall health and wellness, and the great education that you all are getting, and will be registered dietitians soon. So looking forward to that maybe you'll be helping us as we reach out for those RDs. So really appreciate it. Let's see here. I think that's covered most of the questions in the chat. We can hang out for just a little bit more if anybody has anything. But again, appreciate you all and this great information you shared with us today. A different approach with nutrition and the impact it has on all of our systems overall in the body. And really appreciate you all for joining us as well, and have a wonderful day.